Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 4 of Seraph of the End. Ah, finally! I've been waiting for this episode, not only because after this episode I can watch the OP and the ED. Someone said in the comments that after this episode is over, from this point on I can watch the ED, so I think I'll watch the ED this episode, but the next episode I'll watch the OP and ED. Finally! I've been waiting for it! It's not that I don't mind skipping it, it's just with Funimation's platform, it's really hard to skip it because you gotta sit there and like try to time it perfectly, and it's just a big tease. But I'm excited for that reason, but also because we got revealed that Michaela's alive. Who knew? And that he's a vampire. And so this episode's called Vampire Michaela. I want to know backstory. I want to know what happened, and I feel like we're gonna find out. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've been waiting. I've thought about it since episode 1. I'm like, there's no way he's dead. No. Which technically he's dead, maybe. If we're reviewing how we view vampires in this world, I'm very curious because we've established there are literal demons that can inhabit weapons and people. So there are literal demons in this world. So I'm like, what are the vampires essentially? So if not like a subsect of demons or a different kind of monster or a different being altogether, maybe they're just a different species. Who knows? But yeah, I'm very curious to see what all happens in this episode and how, if we get backstory on Michaela, what he's been doing the last 4 years, because we kind of got what you've been doing. We've gotten like all the backstory of him getting into the army and into the extermination squad, all of that with Shinoa, doing all that sort of thing. But I'm curious to know what exactly Michaela has been up to. So I'm pretty excited. I have a feeling we're gonna like Michaela's character a lot. I just have that feeling. I liked him in episode 1. He's more of my type of character, Michaela is. So I'm curious to know what he's been up to and how his character has developed. So, before we start, I do want to feel bad because I think I ragged on Yuichi a little bit last episode, being like, oh, this is, people must not like Armin because he's like this character. And then everybody was like, I love Yuichi. And I'm like, oh no. I was like, what have I done? So I have a feeling, I'm recording this a little bit ahead of time, I have a feeling in the comment section everybody's gonna be like, what'd you just say about Yuichi? And I'm gonna be like, oh no! So don't spoil me, obviously, but if that's a sign that Yuichi becomes a character I really like, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Somebody even commented he was like Dazai. I'm like, wait, what? So no spoilers, obviously, but I'm like, huh? That'll be fun to see develop as we go on with the show. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, with that being said, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive into this episode, shall we? We're going to start Seraph of the End, Vampire Reign, episode 4. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1. And I'm so excited, y'all. Let's go. Oh, fun times. Oh, this episode was really good. Kimizuki. I think I'm going to like Kimizuki a lot. He's the buffer we need for our idiot boy Yu. Okay. All right. And him and you have a lot more in common than meets the eye. So I'm like, interesting. This episode was really surprising. I thought we got just enough with Michaela to kind of basically explain how he became a vampire and to give us a little bit of world building into the vampires and their situation and some interesting things being developed on the surface here of what's going on and setting these two sides up. And the Seraphs, calling the humans Seraphs. Seraph of the End. Yep, the war to end humanity. Cool. Roll credits. And Michaela wanting to save you and old Farad being like, oh, you're going to go try to rescue your boyfriend? So we need to talk about this. I really there's a lot of interesting things going on the surface here. And the thing about the vampires and everything and what's going on with them. Okay. I like that shows like this. I'm watching lots of shows. I'm watching Yona and Attack on Titans. And in both Yona and Attack on Titan, no spoilers. You should be watching those shows. If you're not, they're really good. But there's a lot of moral ambiguity and moral grayness with your protagonists and your antagonists. And it's to the point where you feel for both sides. You kind of understand both sides where they're coming from. And so it makes things more complicated. And with this episode in particular, it seems like it's kind of setting up something similar to that. So I'm very curious because they don't outright just say humans are evil. There's a little more to it. So I'm curious. Obviously the vampires calling them livestock and stuff is you feel a little bit more for the protagonist, but there's more going on than meets the surface. So I'm excited next episode to finally watch the OP. I watched the Edie. The only thing that seemed kind of surprising in the Edie is that there's a blonde girl, but I feel like we're going to meet her later on. So that's not too spoilery. Wit Studio. When Wit Studio wants to animate really well, they deliver, because the lighting in this episode, there's especially some shots, like the shot with Gurren and Kimizuki with the demon, like the lighting in that was really good. The lighting in this opening scene where everything's in darkness, the shadows and stuff that the animation studio does, it looks really good. And then the theater scene at the very end, it's animated really well. And the expressions are really well. So I'm like, it's very beautiful to look at. But so there's this, so these demonic monsters, I guess they're demons. Or maybe they're vampires that have become demonic. I don't know. I'm assuming we'll it says the 4 horsemen of John, and it's one of those monsters again. But Michaela destroys it. So it's interesting. I wonder if they're just vampires that have gotten out of hand and tried to get too powerful and made a contract with a demon, and it just didn't work out, because you can't do that. Because they talked about the forbidden enchantments at the end, and I'm like, that's the demons, right? So I'm curious to know if maybe these 4 horsemen are what happens when a vampire tries to make a contract with a demon and it goes awry. Because I could see that happening a lot, because as Gurren establishes, if you have any lust in your heart, then the demons feed off of that. Like whether it's rage or desperation, they feed off that. And a vampire would, I imagine, have lots of lust, because they have bloodlust, things like that. And so a demon would just kind of instantly feed off of that. So that's interesting. But yeah, so this is curious too. This is a very different scenario from what happened at the start of this series. I love the animation on the little girl. The little girl's animation is really good, and Michaela saves her. So, okay, we established this apocalyptic virus. It wiped out in the sector that you and them were in, everybody over the age of 13 back in the day, 8 years ago. Okay. And so then we establish that the vampires took the Farad's unit basically took all of the kids and basically made them into this like blood-sucking factory. That doesn't seem to be going on in the present time though. That seems to be a little bit different. And I'm guessing because maybe they were all kids, they were easier to manipulate and do that too. But since there are adults now involved, they can't just take a bunch of adults and do that too. So they're instead the narrative's changed a little bit. The plan has changed a little bit, because now they're saving these zones, and the protection that they're giving is basically like the one guy, he says protection, that's hilarious. He like pops over by Michaela and says that who would protect livestock, you own it. So he's suggesting that, yeah, we saved these people from these monsters, and in return for saving you, we're going to own you now. Like we basically control you now, and you can't do anything about it because you owe us. Okay, they're like basically saying, in terms of us protecting you, we'll protect you if you guys give us blood. So I need blood to survive, so this is a way of doing it. Seems a lot more economical than building a giant factory, you know. Interesting indeed. So they're claiming all this territory. And Michaela just seems to have no part of it, right? Like the other vampire's trying to poke fun at him, and this is a mirror of episode 2. It's a direct mirror. It's kind of insane. But yeah, this whole conversation at the beginning of the episode with Michaela's situation is a direct mirror to you fighting off the Horsemen of John at the beginning. It's a direct mirror. Like at the time, you was like, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to get strong so I can avenge Michaela. And here, Michaela's like, I'm not here to make friends with any of you. I don't like any of you. You're all vampires. I didn't choose to be a vampire. I got forced into it. I don't like any of you. I'm just doing this so I can get closer to you. It's great. Because the guy's like, oh, well, you're strong. Rumor has it that you became a vampire after drinking the blood of our queen. The third progenitor, Queen Krul. Is that really true? And regardless of his background, he acted arbitrarily and took all the credit. So yeah, which Michaela's like, I don't really care about the credit. I'm not here for it. So yeah, the third progenitor. I guess the higher up you are, the more powerful you are. He's just a greedy human that turned. So that's what gets his attention when he says you're a greedy human that turned. And Michaela's like, no, I didn't want this at all. I'm not greedy. I was the opposite of greedy, which I would argue is why Krul gave him the power in the first place. Because he was the opposite of greedy. So he's like, I'm not interested in getting credit. Do what you want. I love it. Michaela may be my favorite character in this show so far. I freaking love Michaela. I mean, I like Kimizuki and I like you, are two idiots sharing a brain cell, but Michaela's my type of character. I'm all about it. And so yeah, he's off to the side here by himself, and the girl goes up to him, and it's so creepy. She's like, "You saved my life," and she offers herself to him. And I'm like, does he take it or not? We don't find out. She's like, "To show my gratitude, I want to offer you my blood." And he just stares at it, and she's like, "It's for you." And he looks at her like he's going to do it, and we don't find out if he does or not. That's the thing. So it's like, did he take it or did he not? We don't find out. But he has that flashback of him and you talking about escaping. And he's like, "Oh yeah, these are my memories when I was a human." And God, that shot where he's like looking into the camera is all crushed over, it was very creepy. So Krul, we get old Krul come in, and she's like the queen. It says she's the third progenitor, so either her parents are the first and second, or her predecessors, or she's like the third generation. But it said that Farad was the seventh. So interesting. There's two above her, which is curious. But girl is strong. I love her voice actress. Her voice actress has this like, it's like a sultry voice, but it's also kind of sweet. It's like a sickly sweet voice. I like it. It's very deceptive because she looks like a member of Vocaloid. She just looks like this magical girl, and then comes on and rips off Farad's arm and threatens him. Also, Farad. Yeah, of course he wasn't dead. And I like that he's like, "Oh, I love you." And she's like, "You just love my power. Shut up. You don't really love me." And he's like, "Well, that's a benefit." It's like, no, Farad just wants her power because she's stronger than him. It's like, okay, so we're setting up things with Farad. We're setting up how much Krul does not like Farad. And then the whole thing with her turning Michaela is she's like, "You're about to die. If you want, I'll give you eternal life." And Michaela's like, "I don't want it." And see, that's the thing. She labels the humans later on in her speech as being greedy. And Michaela's not greedy. In that moment, he's like, "I saved my friend you. I can die now." And she's like, "Nope. I like you. You aren't greedy. You're different than most humans. So I'm going to turn you." And it's like, And I'm wondering too, because since he's not greedy and he isn't driven by that like lust or rage or whatever, if she's thinking he can handle like a vampire's powers or how that works. We're getting like slowly tiny little nuggets of world building, right? Tiny little nuggets of world building. It's interesting. But yeah, but Farad like threatens her, saying that he's going to tell the other progenitors about what she's doing. And she's like, "Go ahead and try. Like, I'm the queen, so what you going to do?" But then, yeah, that like scream whenever she makes him drink her blood, it's like, ugh. Yeah, so that turns him into a vampire. So he really had no choice in the matter. Fun times. And so I'm curious, God, you such an idiot. I'm like, please don't overreact. He probably will, with Michaela being a vampire. The thing is, Michaela does not look like a vampire. He still looks human, except for the little teeth. So that's curious that it doesn't change his appearance, really. But I really like his character so far. I'm like, oh, Michaela, I have a feeling I'm going to like your character. So then we have Kimizuki. Kimizuki, this pink-haired boy. He reminds me of the main character off that one show. I've not watched it yet. My brother's watched it. Maybe it's Psyche K or something, where the guy's psychic or something. I haven't watched it, but his character looked like that from the onset with the pink hair. I was like, okay. And Shinoa's so devilish. She was like, "Well, I was supposed to let them meet each other, but they kind of just did naturally." And Gurren's like, "Well, did you stop him from fighting?" And she's like, "Well, no." She's like, "I didn't stop them. It's fine. They've worked it out," as they're like beating each other to a pulp, you know. And Yoichi, I hadn't thought about this, but the way Gurren describes things is that if you have any type of like negative emotion, like lust or desperation or rage in your heart, like a demon will feed off of that and try to take you over. Yoichi doesn't seem to have that at all. So he would be an ideal candidate for this army because he's kind of like Michaela. He doesn't have those feelings. So he would be worthy to wield a weapon like that. Whereas you, the only thing keeping you from a demon controlling him is that he has that love for Michaela and that strong desire to see him again. So it's like, okay. And we established in this episode that Kimizuki could have that too because of his sister, like his strong desire to save his sister. It's like, okay, that love, it seems like that love in their heart keeps them from getting taken over. So that makes me curious what Gurren's deal is, because Gurren from the outset, Gurren reminds me a lot of you in that he's very crass. he like just uses brute force to push people around. But clearly he's not been taken over by the demons, so there's something else driving him. So that's curious. That has me curious about Gurren's character. I like that we have this mirror world. We have Michaela and the vampires, and we have you and the extermination squad, the Demon Imperial Army. And Gurren and Farid seem like they're mirror versions of each other. Like Farid is to Michaela what Gurren is to you. Like they both get frustrated by these upper, higher power characters. I would argue Farid is worse than Gurren, but who knows, right? I also love the animation of the demon coming out of Gurren's sword. It like flows like ink, like black ink in water. It's so creepy. And the thing that where it turns purple and the record's scratched in his office, and Kimizuki's like, okay, this is why this guy's in charge of my unit. This is why he's strong. This demon is crazy. So curious. It's very, very interesting. So yeah, so Shinoa is just like, I could tell you to become friends with Kimizuki, but he'd probably ignore me or argue with me. So I'm just going to let it naturally happen. Shinoa has a very natural hands-off approach. She's like, and Gurren's like, do your job. And she's like, I am. She's like, you gave me a really hard job, right? So yeah, I loved the classroom scene, them just fighting it out, duking it out. No worries. Everything's fine. Poor Yoichi. I like that they've gone to this classroom. And you, bless his heart, our boy you, he's like, I don't need anybody. And I'm like, Yu's like, I don't need to make friends. It's kind of like Michaela. Michaela's like, I don't need friends in this. The difference is, though, there is a big difference because in the vampire world, it kind of seems like everybody, they're working together, but they're not really friends. They're all just kind of out for themselves. And then with the humans, Gurren is like, Gurren is like Nakama Central. Like, let's all become friends. Because Gurren's like, we need to be friends to fight the enemy. And it's like, okay. So it's like a contrast, a mirror, again, that's doing all that. So yeah. And then I love the animation on Kimizuki. They really go out of their way to make him look really good. Like his expressions, everything, they really like animating him and his like narrowed eyes. And I love the kick at the end where Gurren's like does the kick and kicks both of them into the door. Like the animation was so good. But yeah, so we get the little exposition no jutsu about Kimizuki, that he's really just trying to get into the Imperial Army to get enough funds to transfer his sister to a better hospital. I find the whole apocalyptic virus thing curious because it's like at this point, after 4 years, they found a way to control the virus where they can stave it off, but unless they have really good medicine, they can't, regular common medicinal purposes aren't doing it. And I found it curious in the hospital scene, like they have all the talismans around her bed, like to like ward off the virus or whatever. Like all the talismans all around her medical equipment was really interesting. And they're kind of like the talismans on the puppets. So that's curious. Like that's the best that they can do. Visually, the talismans around all of her medical equipment and her hospital room was very creepy. And it was very visually effective to show how desperate the situation is for Shimizuki. And I love that that's how him and Yu bond. Because Yu's like, I've lost all my family and friends. So I know what it's like. And he's like, you shouldn't have to go through the same thing. He's like, you'll regret it if you don't say goodbye to them and you're not with them. And so I like that point of love, like Yu's love for his found family and Kimizuki's love for his sister is the connecting point. That's where him and Yu can bond and become friends over, because they both have that similarity. And they both have the same personality. They're both two idiots sharing a brain cell. It's like, like you do. It's great. But yeah, that whole thing with Gurren was really, really good. And so yeah, they do this simulation where they all get paired up. And it's a great payoff. It's a great setup and payoff with Yu's character, because Yu came into the classroom being like, I don't want to be friends with any of you. And then when you get to the actual training session where you need a friend, nobody wanted to be friends with him because they're like, screw you. And then he got stuck with Kimizuki, which everybody's like, you're a delinquent too. We don't want to be friends with you either. So it's fun. But then, yeah, I can't believe that during the middle of the seminar, they just announced his sister was struggling and about to die. I was like, you couldn't just pull him aside and tell him that? You'd announce it to the whole crew? Like, way to share, like, no HIPAA policies here. Just no HIPAA here. We're just going to spread all the gossip about his sister. Okay. But yeah, but exposition-wise, that needed to happen. I thought they'd, like, drag him out into the hallway and then tell him, and because he was chained up to you, he'd have to hear, but whatever. And I like that you punches the glasses off of him and makes him see. You know, it's a nice visual symbolism of making him see. And then the doctor is like, we got through this crisis today, but it's not getting any easier. Yeah. And then I love the visual representation of the bench outside the hospital. And there's you on one side and Kimizuki on the other. They're chained together, but their backs are to each other. But they like both in this moment of bonding, like realize that they're both have the same ambitions and they're both have the same resolve and they're not going to give up so easily, right? Because of each other. I really like that bonding moment between them. And as soon as Kimizuki leaned his head back and you leaned his head against him, I was like, cool. BFF bros. Best bros. Absolutely love it. And so yeah, then we tie back to this grand theater. Again, God, I'm watching all these same shows at the same time and it's all merging together. Imagine that. Fun times. But yeah, so this crazy looking vampire woman with the bustier, she's like out there talking about, okay, I want to go back to this though. I want to go back to this and I've got to refresh because Funimation's really slow. I want to go back to this moment because them talking about the war with the vampires. I want to see exactly, I want to go back to this moment and kind of see what they were saying because I feel like it's important, right? So we start out by this woman saying, she's talking about the Demon Imperial Army. She says, today we've gathered all the nobles with progenitor's blood for one reason, a threat. So these are all the vampires that have the blood of the progenitor. Okay, right? So they're all the nobles. Okay, and so Michaela is technically a noble because Krul gave him her blood. And there's a threat. All right? And so I like that she's on the throne. Running wild around northern Tokyo is a human organization called the Japanese Imperial Demon Army. And I like that nobody is near Farad because he's an asshole. And she's saying they're killing our brothers and expanding our territory. And Michaela's like, oh, a human organization. Doesn't know you's a part of it. And so, yeah. And I like that Farrad's like, hey, come over here and sit with me. And Michaela's like, nope. Like steers hard left. Like, I am not sitting next to you, you jerk. I love it. He's like, you killed me. No. I just love that this show has a really good sense of tongue-in-cheek humor, like just trying to map it out. And Michaela's like, I'm not being friends with you. Hell no. But then the woman says, flirting with the forbidden enchantment as they desire. So, okay, so flirting with the forbidden enchantment. So that's the demon and the sword. That's the demon and the weapons. So they call it a forbidden enchantment. Like you don't mess with it. Which I'm assuming is how the apocalypse, the horsemen of John are created. That you mess with it, you become one of those monsters. So interesting. So they're like, we need to stop them not only because they're killing our brothers, but they're flirting with things they shouldn't. And it may, cause a muck. Because it seems like the vampires are stopping the demons too. Interesting. And she says, according to our intel, they're experimenting on the Seraph of the End again. Seraph of the End. Roll credits. We don't know what that is exactly. But don't tell me. Don't spoil me. But I have a feeling we're going to find out. Interesting. And then, yeah, he's like, nope, not sitting next to you. If we keep letting them run loose, then another plague like the one 8 years ago will occur for sure. So it almost seems like the plague, the original apocalyptic virus, was caused by the humans and the vampires came out of hiding because of it. Maybe. And maybe it's one of those things where the vampires had been underground this whole time and had been able to just like feed on random humans peacefully. And because of the virus wiping out like a massive amount of the population, suddenly they were like, no, we need to come out or we're going to die. If we don't have the humans, we're going to die. So it was like, we got to protect the supply chain, right? Interesting. This woman that like is the woman that is like the one giving the presentation, she's like in all pastels. It's kind of unnerving. She's like, and then that's when Krul takes over. She's like, therefore, we have decided to exterminate the Japanese Imperial Demon Army. She's like, that's what we're doing, y'all. This is a declaration of war. Yeah, this is war. And she's so excited by it. And they're like, oh, okay. She's like, to protect the world's stability, we'll wipe out the greedy humans. So I'm assuming by greedy humans, she's talking about the Imperial Army because they couldn't wipe out all humans. That would get rid of their food supply. So to protect the stability, we're going to wipe out all of the greedy humans. Okay. And then we cut over to Michaela, who's like, war, Seraph of the end. He's like, I don't understand what all these things are, but I'm going to come to your rescue soon. And then I love that we pan over from him thinking about this to Farid below him. And Farid's just like, you're about to do something stupid, Michaela, and I'm going to be there to watch. It's like, this episode was really, really good. And then we cut from there. I liked this episode a lot. It's a lot of world building. It's a lot of establishing Kimizuki's character. I really like his character. Again, Yu needs a buffer, and Yoichi is too nice to be the buffer, and Shinoa's too trolling to be the buffer, so Kimizuki will do the job. Cool. So we have the blonde girl left to meet, and that's pretty much all that we see in the OP or the ED as being our squad. So I'm curious. And, man. Yeah, so curious to know. I hadn't realized this starting this, but I guess this is 2 seasons. One season's 12 episodes, and then there's another 12 episode season. So 2 seasons of the show. Yay. Awesome. Good deal. I didn't realize that going into this, but someone noted it on Discord the other day. I was like, oh, okay. So, yeah. I'm pretty excited though, y'all. Really excited. I get to watch the OP next episode. I can watch the ED now. Everything. It's all falling in place. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. Please don't spoil me. I'm really liking getting these surprises. And this world building is really interesting. And I like that this show is just giving us little crumbs at a time. So that's really fun. So I'm curious to see how it all gets revealed as the show goes on. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 5 of Seraph of the End. Bye.